Support for Flying Valiant Builds is brought to you by 1st and 64th Customs, Video Geek Productions, the Brian Smith YouTube channel, Matchbox Mark, Jonathan Von Isch, and Donald Rashik. Please like, share, and subscribe. Whoop. What's this? That's what I call a special delivery. D. Johns. Whoever this is must have the worst YouTube channel ever. Let's see what we got. Well, hey there folks, Chuck here, and this is a weird little blast from the past. This video was actually recorded almost a year ago. This is from late September, early October, and I happened to have a proposition come my way by my good friend David over at TWYCE Diecast, which at the time was referred to as the worst YouTube channel ever, and how he got from that to TWYCE Diecast, I will leave for you to figure out. Anyway, David was one of my first subscribers and first people to interact with the channel, and if you know David, you know he is the nicest guy in diecast customizing and collecting, and it's wonderful to have him as a friend and as someone who engages with my videos and likes my work. And he had this proposition for me. He had a friend in Estonia that loved this particular Porsche 935, and it was in the Apple livery, which is a livery that I think is amazing. It is so 80s and so colorful, and I was excited just to hear that he was doing that custom. And then he talked to me about doing some race weathering for it, and I was like, yes, absolutely, I am so in. This would be a lot of fun to do. Since then, he has done the video and released it, and it is now in Estonia, so I am now free to talk a little bit about this project since I think it's been a year. And I found this footage recently as I was digging through some stuff and realized, oh yeah, I was going to make a video on that. So if you don't mind seeing how I used to do weathering, I've changed a lot of stuff since then, but there's still a lot of carryover into what I currently do. So I thought this was worth sharing, and it's a good way to draw some attention to my buddy David's channel. And you can actually click the link up in the corner right now to see the video that he did unveiling this build, and you might notice it's also the same build that is his logo, which I'm also incredibly flattered by. Before then, we're gonna just dive right in here because there was a lot of stuff that I do now that I didn't do then, so there's none of the breakdown and all that stuff. So join me as we take a little trip back through some of my channel's early days and my early techniques. Punch that subscribe button, let's boogie. That's right, we're just diving in with the disassembly, and this is how it came, as you saw. So, you know, obviously David had procured my services to do weathering, but before I did the weathering, I felt like there were some details that needed to be addressed on the vehicle, namely the black trim around the window areas, the windshield wiper, and the window trim on the glass. I did this with tarnished black using an Army Painter fine detail brush, and then scraped everything clean after it had dried with a toothpick. Again, if you haven't seen my videos before, I prefer to use colors like tarnished black and oily black for things like this because in reality, things are seldom actually fully black or fully white. So I use these colors to give hints of dark charcoal or dark brown in areas where rubber might actually have a tint to it other than just straight black pigment. Now you may recall from my video way back when I was recreating Eric Bana's Beast Falcon XB, I used the AK Interactive Asphalt weathering effect set. In reality, I actually had used it once before, and I used it on this vehicle. David, I hope you don't mind that I used your car as a test mule, but the first thing I did was brought out the mud spattering effects and carefully flicked it all around the base of the vehicle to create the dirt splatter that would be kicked up from racing on a racetrack. Anywhere that it got too high, I carefully cleaned off with a cotton swab. I did a little on the windshield, making sure to periodically clean to make it look like the windshield wiper had been working. And while I was at it, I did the wheels that David sent as well for good measure. I also wanted there to be a good accumulation of road grime on the underside of the vehicle, It was hard to find actual shots of the underside of these Porsches, but they were actually silver underneath. So I didn't do any painting to the Zamac that was there. I just applied a watered down wash of some grimy black and then went over the whole thing with a cotton swab and wiped it up to create the effect of road grime, then splattered everything again with a stiff brush and a toothpick. Again, cleaning as needed in areas where I thought it was too heavy. This is definitely something I would do differently now. I am using AK Interactive Panel Liner, which is a great product in some ways. I like the consistency of it, but I feel like it's better as a wash more than as a panel liner, and this is my personal opinion, but I think the Tamiya panel liner is significantly superior to this as far as using the built-in brush and the ease of control and the ease of cleanup. The AK Interactive feels a bit too heavy. There's a lot of stuff that I think AK Interactive does better than anybody else, and their weathering packs are incredible, but I think Tamiya's panel liner is still the gold standard when it comes to getting into the nooks and crannies and staying away from anywhere else. So you'll see as I go here, there's a lot of put the panel liner on, clean it off. And yeah, I'm sure with time I could get a lot better at it. This is panel liner for light aircraft, so it's actually got like a nice kind of brownish look to it, which I really liked. But Tamiya also has a dark brown panel liner that I use as well. So if I had to do it over again, I would stick with Tamiya, but I still think that this stuff is pretty good, especially if you prefer using a brush application. But as far as the capillary effect that you can get with the really fine paints in thin panel liners, there's really no substitute for Tamiya. Plus a bottle of that stuff will last a 1/64 scale builder their entire modeling life. You're using maybe 3 or 4 drops total on each build. I'm using a very light pressure here to tidy up the panel liner to take out as little as possible, just enough to skim the surface. Again, if I had to do this over again, I probably would have done the panel liner before I did any of the weathering. But this is a good way to remember that we learn and grow. And I actually have a whole checklist now that I do to do things in order of my weathering step by step. And I'm thinking of releasing that as a piece of Patreon content. It's like a downloadable PDF. Maybe doing a tutorial video for that and for my premium members as well. We'll see. I'm incredibly grateful to my patrons, and I really want to find new ways and better ways to provide them with extra content to thank them for all the support they've given me over the last year and a half. Once the panel liner was done, it was time to go to the pigments. First I used the Asphalt Road Dirt pigment, and with pigments I find it's best to just tip a little bit into the lid and dip from there instead of dipping straight into the pigment bottle. With a cotton swab you'll take out way too much because you are always going to misjudge how far down you're going to stick it in there, and that's what she said. You're always going to take out way too much, or you risk spilling or contaminating your full supply. So word to the wise, tip it in the lid, you'll be glad you did. Once the Asphalt Road Dirt was applied, I went to the lighter pigment, which is City Dirt, to add some modulation to the pigments and to mimic the lighter dirt that would be more dried on top of the more caked on and darker asphalt dirt that would be underneath. Again, with 1/64th scale, things tend to need to be lighter than you think they are because these cars are so small and compact. Pigments look darker on them than they actually are. Whenever you think black, think charcoal. Whenever you think, you're probably thinking more of a mid-gray or even a light gray. And that's why so many dioramas and displays end up with super dark asphalt that doesn't really look natural. With the tires, I smeared the asphalt dirt on the tread to mimic the wear that they would be getting as they were getting thrashed around the track. And for good measure, once everything was applied, I did a little more splatter effect to the front. All in all, this is a fantastic little set from AK Interactive. I do highly recommend it if you're doing weathering, especially if you're doing race cars. I think the end result will speak for itself as to how this turned out, because aside from the washes and the panel liner, those were the only weathering tools that I used on this build, and I was very happy with the outcome. And I tend to go a little over the top with my weathering products and my amount of layers, and with this one, less is definitely more. This is some matte varnish getting applied over top of everything to seal up the wheels and the chassis, and some of the pigments along the bottom of the car. This is before I had pigment binder, which is nice, but it does leave a sticky residue, and it does have a bit of a sheen to it, so be careful when applying it. You'll probably want to go over it again with matte or ultra matte varnish just to seal everything up. Of course, now that I'd done all this work on the outside of the car and David had done me the decency of shipping me the entire car, I felt like I needed to do the inside of it too. So after looking at some source photos of the original car, I dug in. First thing I noticed about the original car is it doesn't have a giant plastic blob for a steering wheel, so I snipped that out and replaced it with one of my 3D printed steering wheels. Also, this is where I discovered that sometimes Hot Wheels cars have two-part interiors. Much of the interior was white, and what I should have done is primered this in a light gray or white before doing this, but again, you live and learn. So I did several layers of white to seal up the inside. The seat is black in the original car. Then I sealed everything with a matte varnish and went in for the details. This is DSP silver. A lot of the accents on the inside of the car are silver, including the tubing, so there wasn't really a lot of opportunity for color in there. I did add a few pops in the middle on the center console to mimic some of the buttons. I also used AK Interactive's panel liner for charcoal and black aircraft and did not care for this. As you can see, it went on way too goopy. It felt really more like just thin paint than an actual wash or panel liner that's designed to stick to the crevices and nothing else. It took a lot of cleanup to get all of that off. Again, could be operator error, but it was really not the tool for me. Once all that was done, I went over the inside with Nuln oil to give it a bit more of a race-worn, grimy look. Then realized that was way too much, so I took most of it off with a cotton swab, and that seemed to do the trick. Also, if you're doing this, remember the dashboard of these cars is black. I also did some Nuln oil inside the wheels. I know why people like Nuln oil. It's still something that I'm wrestling with being worth the cost when Vallejo does very good washes as well that are cheaper and larger volume. And since I dove right in on this project, I forgot to do my before roundabout shot. So once again, here's what I started with. A dismantled kit ready to go back to David as soon as I was done giving it a little road grime. And here's where we ended up. A thoroughly race-worn, but still incredibly stylish Porsche racer. I was very happy with how this turned out, and David seemed pretty pleased as well, and I am told that the recipient in Estonia was equally pleased. So all in all, a job well done. As I mentioned earlier, this video would not be here without my patrons. You saw the Bandit level patrons at the beginning of the video. Now I'd like to thank the Rockford level patrons, Mid-Island Custom Diecast, Maple Leaf Matchbox Makeovers, Double B's Customs, Mr. Zanzibar 91, Gary Tasker, and Aunt Tracy. I'd also like to thank the Douglas level patrons, the Good Bad Better Podcast, Jordan Kleinen, Curtis Crafts, Jim Silva, and Kamikaze Customs. Thank you all for keeping the lights on over here. Which reminds me, I need to do this month's giveaway. If you like what I do and want to join in on the fun, you can help support the channel over at flyingvaliant.com. That will direct you to my Patreon page, or you can click the link down in the description. Every little bit helps, and I am grateful to everyone who stuck with me through this project. There's also ways you can support the channel down below and become a member of the channel. I am working on getting that set up, and it'll offer the same benefits as the patrons. So if you prefer supporting your creators that way, I want to make that available to you as well. I do want to shout out Dotson Diecast for giving me a little thank you during my live stream that I did recently. So thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Go check out his channel. I'll link it in the description. That man is a boundless well of energy. And if you're wondering why nobody can find any zoom-ins on the West Coast, it's probably because he has them. I would also like to announce that due to my current schedule and the unpredictability of my equipment, I am closing my commissions for now. I know several people have approached me about decals and 3D prints, and that's very flattering, but unfortunately I do not have the capacity to address those in a way that I think I would be proud of and that would serve you well. So if you need some advice on places to go, I have plenty of people I can recommend. Just email me at flyingvaliant@gmail.com and I'll point you in the right direction. If you have ordered a commission from me or you're waiting on something from me, it will get done as soon as I figure out why my printer is being so weird. So thank you for your patience. Don't forget you can also follow the Diecast Fun over at Flying Valiant on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you really like what I do, you can click the link in the description to support my brother's creative efforts as he is running the merch shop for Flying Valiant, as well as his own amazing diecast inspired designs. Again, I want to thank David over at TWYCE Diecast for thinking of me for this project. It was a blast to do, and I am so glad I found it and was finally able to share it with you. I've got a whole bunch more builds coming, so please make sure you like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends, and keep the views coming, because that keeps me going, and I've got a lot more fun stuff to show you that is a lot more recent than this. So be sure to ring that bell icon so you don't miss out when it comes along. As always, I want to thank you for coming along with me for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.